Welcome back to the Fantasy Price Check. Today we're going to be talking about Raheem Mostert. Just to let you know what we're doing here on the channel. We are taking a look at player ADPs and we are grading them based upon whether they are overpriced, underpriced, or fairly priced. We're going to be coming out with these ADP price checks all season long leading up to draft, so be sure to subscribe. By subscribing to this channel, you will hashtag win the draft. Let's get into Raheem Mostert. According to Fantasy Football Calculator, Raheem Mostert is being drafted in the back of the 4th round as the RB24 off the board, and according to Fantasy Pros, Raheem Mostert is being drafted as the first picked in the 6th round as the RB26. He's currently being drafted after Devin Singletary, Mark Ingram, and David Montgomery, and ahead of DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and Marlon Mack. The first question we have to answer is, where the hell did this guy come from? The dude has been in the league since 2015 and nobody has heard of him until last year. Raheem Mostert is an undrafted free agent that's been on 7 teams in the last 4 years. This is how Raheem Mostert's first year in the NFL went back in 2015. He was initially signed by the Eagles as an undrafted free agent. He was cut in the preseason. He was signed onto the Dolphins practice squad and released a month later. He was then picked up by the Baltimore Ravens and later cut. He was then claimed by the Browns off the waivers in December and released in the 2016 preseason. We then get to 2016. Mostert then gets picked up by the Jets, released 6 days later, gets signed onto the Bears practice squad, activated and on the active roster for 2 games, released again, re-signed to the practice squad, and then released again. Then he comes to the 49ers. Mostert gets signed to the 49ers practice squad in November of 2016. In 2017, Mostert gets 6 carries. That's it. And in 2018, he gets just 34 carries. Mostert was huge for the 49ers in the final stretch of the year. From weeks 12 through the Super Bowl, Mostert was balling out. However, from weeks 1 through 11, Mostert was not getting a lot of run. Here are Mostert's final stats from 2019. 137 carries, 772 yards, which is 5.6 yards per carry, which is very good. 8 rushing touchdowns, 14 receptions for 180 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. That's nearly 1,000 yards and 10 total touchdowns with a limited role for the first 11 weeks of the season. 8 of his touchdowns came from weeks 12 to 17. Raheem Mostert finished as the RB20 last year, and from weeks 1 to 11, he was the RB47, and then from weeks 12 to 17, he was the RB7. And looking at Mostert's snap percentage, from weeks 1 through 11, Mostert had a snap percentage of 27%, and then that skyrocketed. From weeks 12 to 17, Mostert's snap percentage went up to 55%. That was partially due to injuries, but it was mostly because Mostert overtook that job. In week 8, Matt Breida suffered an ankle injury, and he didn't play at all in weeks 11, 12, and 13. What's interesting, though, is that Tevin Coleman was healthy from weeks 13 through 17. However, the 49ers chose to give Raheem Mostert more snaps, and that was due to a change in their offensive line philosophy. From weeks 14 through 17, Tevin Coleman never had more than 5 rushing attempts per game. There's also rumors that Tevin Coleman may be cut or traded by the 49ers. His cap number in 2020 is $4.8 million. If they trade him, there is no dead money, and if they cut him, they're able to save $2 million against the cap. However, I'm expecting Tevin Coleman to be on the 49ers roster going into 2020. So we're left wondering what the 49ers backfield is going to look like in 2020. Matt Breida has been traded to the 49ers, and I think it's safe to assume that Raheem Mostert is the guy for the 49ers going forward as their starter. Just to have some fun to see what 16 games would look like with Raheem Mostert as a starter, here's what his 16 game pace would be based upon weeks 12 through 17 when he did ultimately become the starter. He would have 187 carries, 1,130 rushing yards, 19 receptions, 242 receiving yards, 19 rushing touchdowns, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Now, there's no way that those TD numbers are going to hold up. However, it does give you a pretty good gauge of what his carries and what his rushing and receiving yards would look like if he were to play 16 games as a starter for the 49ers. Now, here are some numbers that are going to blow your mind. Once I saw these numbers, I immediately raised Raheem Mostert in my rankings. Raheem Mostert is a very fast and explosive player. His 40 time is a 4.32, and according to Next Gen Stats, Raheem Mostert is the 3rd most explosive runner behind Lamar Jackson and Dalvin Cook. Mostert had 23 runs of 10 plus yards. 16.8% of his runs go for at least 10 yards, and Mostert hit 15 miles per hour on 28.5% of his runs. Mostert also exceeded 20 miles per hour 4 different times, which only 7 running backs were able to hit. Mostert ranked first in the league in maximum speed per touch at 13.7 miles per hour. He was first in yards created per touch. Raheem Mostert was also a beast in yards after contact. And shout out to Bootleg Fantasy Football for these stats. Raheem Mostert had the highest true yards per carry, the highest big run rate, the 3rd best production premium, the 6th most big runs, and the 7th best yards per carry against stacked fronts. And lastly, let's not forget that Raheem Mostert rushed for 220 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Packers in the NFC Championship. Raheem Mostert is the 49ers guy. Raheem Mostert knows that, the 49ers know that, and reports indicate that the 49ers are currently working with him on a contract extension. My only concern with Mostert is how he's going to hold up over 16 games, as he's not a big guy. He's only 200 pounds. However, he is going to be working hard this offseason in order to pack on more muscle because he is prepared for the increased workload. I think you're looking at least 200 carries, 1,000 rushing yards, another 200 receiving yards, and 8 to 12 touchdowns from Mostert this year. That puts him as a borderline RB1. Raheem Mostert is underpriced. Guys, you have to get Raheem Mostert on your team. He should not be the running back 26. He should be a top 20 RB this year. After I did this analysis, I bumped up Raheem Mostert in my rankings from the RB28 to the RB20. This guy needs to be drafted no later than the 4th round, as he has top 15 upside. And guys, if you like what we're doing on the channel, I want you to smash that like button and click subscribe. We're going to be coming out with these price checks all season long leading up to drafts. And if you're debating whether you should draft David Montgomery or Raheem Mostert in the 4th round of your draft, I'm going to be throwing up David Montgomery's price check in the corner of your screen, so be sure to check that out. And I'll see you guys on the next one.